Okay, guys, another one of the major themes that's in Of Mice and Men is this idea of strength versus weakness. All right, this is a constant struggle in the book between strong and weak. It's one of the novel's defining conflicts. That means this is a conflict that we see over and over again. And a lot of people have said that Steinbeck, the author, is trying to go around what we traditionally think of strength and weakness as by saying that society, which only values the strong, as we did during the Depression, is doomed to fail. So he's kind of making a comment on that. Though many characters of Mice and Men are after friendship and compassion, you see a lot of times in the book, these characters are pretty afraid of each other. What you can see as Carlson is in the upper corner here. He has this extreme action where he takes this weak dog out that's Candy's, and he shoots him, and that's kind of indicative of this big theme. And he does this with really no feeling at all. And you can see during the Great Depression, the useless, the weak, the old, they're inevitably destroyed, and the strong and the useful fight for survival. So you can see a ranch here in Soledad, California, which may look a little bit similar to what we see in the book, is pictured here. And you also see some of the turmoil of the Great Depression, where times were tough and strength was really valued. Weakness was just trampled all over. You can see two of the main characters here. These are Candy and Crooks. And Candy is here. This is Crooks right here. All right. People like Candy and Crooks, and incidentally, Crooks is physically disabled, and he can only survive at the mercy of other people. They kind of develop these worldviews that are not really too positive. All right, they have anxiety, and they kind of have a detachment to what's going on in their efforts to cling to a different kind of strength. All right, Crooks, you'll see that he puts down George and Lenny's dream of buying their own farm a lot to cover up his own disappointments. And Candy allows Carlson to shoot his own dog in order to seem detached from the whole situation and strong in the face of death. All right, and a lot of people say that Steinbeck is demonstrating his desire to crush any form of weakness and how that warps people's soul and screws them up, causing them to really act cruelly towards other people and even devalue life itself. Here's another big character in the book. This is Curly's wife, as you can see. And Curly's wife, even she, who is kind of at the lowest on the scale of strength in the book, she attempts to go against looking weak or vulnerable. You'll notice in the book she always threatens to have Crooks lynched because he's the one person in the ranch that she has some power over. And power over another person is power at this time period. All right, it's the only way to survive, and she really takes advantage of that and capitalizes on it. The cruel, inhuman ways that the characters like Curly's wife act and speak to each other, and that constant intimidation and the struggle to really assert their own dominance over each other, some say shows Steinbeck, the author's disillusionment with social systems that value strength. that force people to prey upon one another in order to survive, to get by. Now, you'll see here, Lenny is a really interesting character because he, through his own inner struggle, embodies this constant battle between strength and weakness. He is physically imposing and strong, but he's also mentally disabled. He's huge. His frame is compared to a bear. And George constantly kind of brags about Lenny's strength and his resilience and his ability to take over physical tasks. However, Lenny, we see, is really soft on the inside. He's pretty weak. He's got a poor memory. He's very naive about the world, and he really seems like a child in a lot of instances. He needs that companionship of George to help him survive this rough world that Lenny finds himself in. His strength is kind of a gift in George's eyes because it gets them by on this farm, but it's also a curse when seen through Lenny's eyes. All right? So we see that Lenny likes these soft things like rabbits. He talks about mice in another place from his aunt. He talks about puppies. And we see these this dress is kind of symbolic of the dress that really gets him into trouble when he's in weed. That gets them kicked out of weed because he really cannot fit this social standard of not touching and corrupting the things that he touches. So Lenny kind of represents all of our struggles within ourselves, is that strength and that weakness that Steinbeck writes about this. All right? And weakness at this time is really a dangerous thing to admit to, especially during the Great Depression when this book takes place, because that can mean you're cast out of society, and a lot of people would see that weakness as a real danger. And we see George sees Lenny's weakness as a real danger too. Lenny and George are constantly fighting. They're constantly struggling to survive, and they're kind of fighting each other as well. There's a lot of suspicion between them. George kind of always says that he would be better off if Lenny wasn't around, and he would be really successful if Lenny wasn't around. And that's kind of what's going on in the society around them as well. It's this always, we're going to try and one-up each other. And this is Curly in his boxing, trying to assert his toughness. They kind of show that struggles for power, Lenny and George kind of show that the struggles for power are not really necessary, but they're kind of cruel, all right? Even in their relationship, that dynamic of strength and weak kind of shapes up for the battle that ultimately happens at the end of the book. George realizes that Lenny is always going to be a burden. His weakness is always going to limit their chances of survival. So when it really comes down to it, by the end, George feels that he has to kill Lenny in order to survive, which is the supreme act of strength. Even though it's a miserable, situation, George still upholds that. And this really kind of goes with what was going on at the time in the American West with the Great Depression, is these tough choices, and this theme of strength and weakness is a huge deal at this time in our history, and it's a huge theme within this book. Okay? Make sure we take the quiz in the folder and submit it, and we will go over a different theme tomorrow. Thanks, guys.